And welcome tonight to Nick Griffin and Jim Saleam. And I'll need somebody to just make a noise so I can actually see that they're there.
Yes, good evening.
Have you got me?
Oh, I have now. Good. For people looking at home, they've changed the whole layout of this thing, and I'm not used to the new rhythms. Okay, again, welcome. This channel's going to get a rebranding soon. New Australian Bulletin has been put to bed. This is, as you can see in the background, that is the New Australia First Party logo, and this will be the New Australia First Party channel. I want to start off, Nick, by asking you about Stockport and
Southport, not Stockport. Entirely different.
What did I write down? Yeah, I wrote Stockport. Well, I'm an odd thing, only one from me, but Southport. I do apologise for all our English viewers. We're not that parochial here. Or maybe we are. I just haven't done a study on it. But now, these young girls, this is absolutely terrible. They were attending a dance class themed around Taylor Swift, which was dangerous to begin with. But what is this guy? I mean, we've only heard vague reports that he's some Rwandan or something. I don't know what sort of brand of coloured fellow he is, but
well, it's really a big story. This it's 3 little girls have died, 6 others are in hospital. Some very seriously ill. One of their teachers, a young lady, she's very seriously ill. Another adult stabbed in the leg. These are adults who tried to go to stop the attack. And it was the police have said it's by a 17-year-old who cannot be named for legal reasons. And actually, of course, that is entirely true. But because the police and the mass media for so long, when they've had ethnic minority attackers, and especially when they've had Muslim attackers, they've refused to say. So therefore, the public now absolutely at the end of their tether with all of this, just automatically assume that, well, they're not telling us because he's a Muslim. No, they're not telling them actually because he's under 18, so they legally can't. But they played the trick too many times. It's the boy who cried wolf, or in this case didn't, when there was a wolf actually there. So the public have got very, very upset and assumed that it's a Muslim. And then various people on social media have said, yes, it's a Muslim. His name's Ali something. Now, this is either just clickbaiters, because if you're on Twitter and you put something like that, you're going to get, and you're the first one, you're going to get 2 million hits. It's worth money if you monetize. So it's either clickbaiters or it's the usual Zionist, anti-Islamist clash of civilizations. They want us fighting Iran, so just wind things up, and to hell with the consequences. I don't know. But it's become clear, at least. The police did say, no, initially they said he's not an immigrant, because that was also the rumor. He's just arrived on a boat, and MI6 knew all about him. So they said, no, he's not an immigrant. He's from a village just north of Southport, and originally he comes from Cardiff. And then they've said, eventually, and his parents came from Rwanda. So we can take it, he is Rwandan. Now, various of the Tommy Tard types were immediately saying, oh, shows he's obviously a Muslim immigrant. So I looked it up. Rwanda is 2% Muslim. So it's very, very unlikely that he's a Muslim. Now, he could be a Muslim convert, of course. 17-year-old black kid. Certainly, if he was in London, you could say it's entirely possible. If he's not into gangster rap and drugs and so on, he could well have become a Muslim. But up in almost rural edge of Southport, probably not. So that's not it. So, but of course, it is about immigration, no doubt about it. And here's the thing: what they're saying, as far as the elite are talking about it at all in the media, they're saying his parents came to Britain as refugees. And actually, to be fair, although, as you know, I shut the borders to all of them unless they've arrived as refugees from Ireland or the Faroe Isles, because, we're the first safe country they could come to. People from Rwanda had a genuine reason for being refugees at the time of the genocide. But since Rwanda is now safe, peaceful, it's being touted as a tourist destination, It was identified by the gripping wet liberal conservatives as somewhere suitable to send illegal immigrants. Clearly, Rwanda is no longer a country from which people need to flee in fear of their lives. Therefore, that young man's parents should have gone back to Rwanda. So the blood of those kids and the stabbed adults in Southport is not just on the hands of the killer, it's also on the hands of every politician, every member of the media, every member of the liberal elite who've insisted that Britain should be a safe haven, not just to genuine refugees, but genuine refugees who are no longer genuine refugees, and a horde of totally bogus refugees. But just to finish off on this, you probably got some more questions. I think that the response of the Southport public, with a few incomers, and perhaps we'll discuss that a bit more, shows that the patience of the British people, which has been very, very long indeed, has now worn absolutely to snapping point.
Yeah, well, there's riots over there. Now, I apologise to Jim because I just want to.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was normally like to throw it straight to you, but I want to ask Nick this guy's motive. Now he's taken a taxi. I don't know how well publicised this, class was, but he seems to have deliberately targeted it, and so one only has conjecture to fall back on, and that could be that there was a psychosexual motive involved, or that he wanted to just kill the next generation of white breeders. That's, I don't know, but it's very natural for us now to immediately arrive at that stop, at that.
Yeah, indeed. So he's taken a taxi 6 miles. So from the place, the suburb where he lives, into the centre. So it's a very deliberate thing. So he's targeted it. He wouldn't have had any difficulty finding it. So obviously it raises the question of motive. And I think there clearly are several motives, and all of them, the fact that he had that motive, the fact he was here, the fact he had that motive, and the fact that he went and did it, again, our liberal elite, our masters, bear a huge responsibility here. But in the end, the key responsibility is his, and whoever wound him up in that direction. There's several possibilities. He could be a Muslim convert, or just potentially as a sort of a third worlder, hugely angry about what Israel is doing in Gaza. So it could be on the basis, especially if he's a Muslim convert, well, they're killing our kids in Gaza, so I'll go and kill some of their kids here. And if that's the case, obviously, whatever his motive, the bastard should hang. Simple as that. Should have a fair trial. If convicted, he should hang. But it could be that he's motivated because of Gaza, and while it in no way justifies that, you can then understand it. And the fact that Britain, under the previous government, the Tory government, and now straight away under the Labour government, is full square behind Israel, does indeed put our people in the firing line of somebody else's war. That's one possibility. The second, and what I think is the most likely, is that simply he's an anti-white racist bigot. And as you said, he's gone to go and kill some of the next generation of white kids. Entirely possible. Is that his fault? Yes, it's his fault. But who is it? Why do so many young men, including British-born men of immigrant origin, grow up hating white people? It's not actually, it's natural to be wary of people of another colour and race and so on. It's not natural to have that much hatred. You go and murder little girls. But of course, when you're brought up in a society where the whole education system, almost the huge sections of the mass media, sections of fake mass-produced popular culture are all about slavery, colonial exploitation, white privilege, white guilt, what white people are really bad, then it's really no surprise that some of the non-whites really take that on board and end up as vicious haters. So that's a possibility. It could be he's just been sat, apparently he's supposed to be a loner, sits at home most of the time. He might have spent the last 2 or 3 years smoking skunk cannabis and be already suffering, as black people seem to do more readily than white people, just the same as they run faster than us, but they can't damn well swim. There's none of them in the Olympics, and there's lots of squealing about the fact that there's not enough black swimmers on the Olympics at the moment. No squealing about the fact there's not enough white people in the 100-meter sprint, but that's a different matter. Anyway, it could be that regular smoking of really hard, strong cannabis has simply scrambled his brains and turned him psychotic. That's entirely possible. That would probably actually interconnect with anti-white racial hatred as well. Or the other one, of course, is that living in his, in his bedroom in his mum's house and so on, he's an incel. And this is a possibility, targeting a Taylor Swift themed thing.
Sort of
the woman-hating incel poisonous subcult particularly loathes Taylor Swift. And it's possible, you mentioned the word breeder, it's in intersection with homosexuality, incel stuff, and this intense hatred of women that this monstrously ugly little clique has built as a fake counterpoint to feminism, and the promotion of that. So it's one of those things, and whichever it is, the mass media and the political elite bear a huge responsibility. If it's cannabis, it's because effectively they've legalized it. If it's incel stuff, it's because they promoted feminism to the point where young men feel absolutely desperate and lost and pointless, and go down this disgusting rabbit hole. I don't know. One way or another, he should hang, but the elite should pay as well.
Absolutely. Jim, do you want to weigh in here with?
Well, I'm quite fascinated by, in a way, the way you've described the potential way this man is thinking, the anti-white hatred, the literature he's reading, what he's being given by the mass media, the concept of the incel. It's really interesting because, as you know, more than most commentators in the UK, this was the model that was often put onto our side of the political debate. I use our side very generically, of course. Yeah. Desperately minded young males, alienating ideologies, being told all the time that Europeans are only purveyors of evil and whatnot in the world and culture, lashing out in ways that make no sense. You're actually, in a way, suggesting this can become a universal model, which I think is very, very important because it helps to explain the lack of proper culturally centred place by some of the migrant people in the European countries. It also shows, as you've just indicated, the pointlessness of some sort of resistance, if that's even the right word for it, to a perceived cultural attack. And we've had the experience with some white folks who are not seeing it clearly, and they lash out in certain ways and they adopt stupid slogans and they do foolish things, and they can't associate, as you pointed out, with women. They don't have a basis. I'm not going to name anyone, of course, but there was a commentator in Australia who was styling himself as I'll say a white fella's advocate, who actually was talking about underage girls being good fare for people who were, white patriot activists, as long as you marry them, of course. Mm. I would have thought as long as you attended a psychiatrist, might be a better way to look at it. The other point I was going to raise is the obvious one. You indicated that Britons have reached the end of their tether with all of this propaganda. They see this appalling murder that has no relevance. Is it true that the disorders have now broken out all over the UK, that there is widespread rioting and anger from people? Is that the case? And if so, where does it go?
That's not the case. I think it's based on the fact that there was Southport, which incidentally, to be fair to Nathan, is quite close to Stockport. Southcote's on the coast, just north of Liverpool. But yesterday afternoon, there was a major riot in Southend, which is another coastal town, but it's on the southeast coast, just east of London. And that involved scores, if not several hundred, African youths running riot, literally with machetes and brandishing knives, and running the police. In fact, the police just ran and hid and told people stay indoors. So actually far more serious violence than Southport, although in Southport 22 police were injured, which is a serious number. As far as I know, none were injured in Southend, because in Southport, if they were up against whites, they stood and tried to fight a bit. In Southend, when they were up against a horde of black youths with machetes and knives, the police simply ran away. So no police were injured in Southend. But that was, as far as I know, that was the only disturbances last night or yesterday in Britain. But of course, it comes quite closely on from very serious disturbances in Leeds 2 weeks ago. And there, so in Southport, you've got angry whites. In Southend, you've got just young blacks doing what feral young blacks do. And in Leeds, you had major trouble, and this was Roma gypsies. In an area which used to be West Indian, then became largely Muslim. Now it's becoming increasingly Roma gypsy. Now, I've often, criticised the Roma gypsy way of life, and the fact they're in this country in huge numbers from Eastern Europe, and pointed out they're not European at all. The media always say, "Oh, so and so is a Romanian." Yeah, and they're not a Romanian. They're a Roma gypsy. They're a Hindi-speaking sub-tribe out of India who haven't integrated at all, and they're very troublesome. But in this case, I was one of the few right-wing commentators, no longer on Twitter because I've knocked off, but on Telegram, saying, well, actually, I'm on the side of the Roma here, because the trouble was that the police and the local authorities went to take a whole family of kids into care. It means putting them into a system where they're immediately asked, what's your gender, and all the rest of it. And they were simply snatched with a great deal of police aggression, stroke brutality. And the community came out and responded and rioted, and then demonstrated actually peacefully, but very, only just peacefully, to get those kids back. And my position was not, or is not, that the Roma are wrong, but that our people are wrong when they don't do the same thing. Because how often do we see our community subjected to the most disgusting injustices? The same police forces did that to the Roma family a few months ago, arrested a 15-year-old autistic girl who had no idea what was going on, because she said that a lesbian police officer looked like her lesbian grandma. That caused trouble, and the local whites came out and objected, but they didn't do what the Roma did, which was stand up to the police. So the only problem with what happened in Leeds with the Roma was that they're doing it and that our people don't. But I think that's the reason people abroad, especially, are saying, "Oh, Britain's riven with riots and so on," because there happen to have been 3, in very short order. But no, we're not yet riven by the whites rising up. But the fact that they have done in Southport, and the fact that it's been very heavily covered, not just on social media, but also now the mainstream media are jumping on and saying, "Isn't it disgusting? These are far right thugs who come in from all over." They're not. I can hear the accent. They're all Southport. But then they're promoting this as, oh, the right wing are exploiting it. All that's happening now is both social media and the legacy media are just telling angry, ordinary whites out there that, hey, look, you can have, in the words of The Clash, a white riot. And I think, having had one as big as that, we are indeed going to see more.
Is there any connection in the cosmology of things, read the arrest of the old sparring partner, Tommy Robinson, in all of this? Yes. Yeah. Well, he was arrested. The rumor that was put out was he was arrested immediately after the big rally that he held in Trafalgar Square. No genuine nationalist will be allowed anywhere near having a rally in Trafalgar Square. The National Front, and then later on BNP, were frequently banned, from things like that, where it was potentially trouble. But obviously it's all set up. But Tommy was actually arrested when he tried to leave the country. He wasn't arrested for trying to leave the country. He was arrested for when he was stopped
by anti-terror police. In Britain, you have a right to remain silent, except if you're arrested under anti-terror legislation, when you must speak to the police and tell them anything you know about terrorism. I've been stopped under this. If they ask to see your mobile phone or your laptop, you must give it to them, and you must give them the password or unlock it for them. And he refused. So they arrested him for that, and then bailed him without any conditions, which is actually quite incredible, because he was due to appear in the High Court. That's, you know, really the most, other than the Old Bailey, it's the most important court in the UK system. He was due to appear in the High Court the following day. He's already got a record of basically, you know, skipping the country and not coming back when he should do and all the rest of it. So he was due to be appearing in the High Court, and they arrested him as he was about to leave the country, and they arrested him on anti-terror charges, and then to refuse to play ball with them immediately means you've broken the terror legislation. So you committed a terrorist crime. You know, it's a nonsense, but the law is the law, and he's committed a terrorist crime, and they let him go without any bail restrictions. Now, I can't think of anyone in Britain who would be allowed just to walk out under those circumstances without bail restrictions. So he's protected still by his, you know, his minders at the top, but he was allowed to leave the country. But certainly the news he'd been arrested, he's been made into a mega hero for millions of working class and lower middle class Brits. You know, no doubt about it. Vast amounts of money and effort have been pushed into creating the Tommy myth, and his huge demonstration in London in Trafalgar Square was actually quite grotesque. They were there flying Israeli flags, gay flags, flags, basically any flag except our flags. There was some George Crosses and Union Jacks. He had blacks and all sorts of sexual freaks there and so on, saying, you know, we're not here about looking after white people. You know, we're just here to protect our multicultural. He's back to that, protect our multicultural society from the evils of Islam, and everyone's welcome to come to Britain as long as they're not Muslims. So that Rwandan killer, so he's absolutely welcome in Britain, according to Tommy. But Tommy's arrest, again, it's flipped something. I mean, there's millions of people who simply love Tommy without even knowing what he really stands for. And it certainly did wind things up in Southport. All the media are saying they were EDL members. No such thing. The EDL hasn't existed for 10 years. EDL support. I didn't hear any EDL chants at all in what I've heard. Primarily, they were just local people really, really angry. And of course, because they believe that this was, well, there's two possibilities. When they were fighting with the police yesterday, it was outside a mosque, and the police were protecting the mosque, which had its windows smashed by stones and so on. If the police had run from there, as they did in Southend, the mosque no doubt would have been burnt to the ground, which would have been bad news from a community relations point of view, because Preston is only 15 miles up the road, and Preston is a former mill town, which has now got a very, very heavy Pakistani presence. And if you go around burning down mosques as close to Preston as that, you are going to get some serious, serious trouble. So actually the police had no choice but to stop that mosque being attacked. Now there's only two reasons that the mosque was a target. You know, lots of people don't like Islam. It's being promoted in a big, big way. And there's many, many problems, as you know. I say myself, Islamification of the West. But the reason that they picked on the mosque is either because of the rumours that the Southport slaughter had been carried out by a Muslim, untrue, or because there was a young man who's either a dark Arab or a Pakistani or something similar. I've seen again a video clip of that. The police arresting a young man all dressed in black with a hat on one of the hottest days of the year and with a knife. And he was there at sort of near that demo. He, I think you can say almost certainly, remarkably brave young man, or stupid, or a troublemaker anyway. He's gone along to protect his mosque alone against a mob of, I don't know, hundreds of people. But the fact the police they arrested him, and word spread, because you could see very clearly, police have arrested some kind of Muslim with a knife. So now they've got 3 kids dead, and there's another Muslim on the street with a knife. So the crowd, instead of doing what they should have done, which is to go to demonstrate outside the police station, for their failure, a repeated failure, or to go and confront the journalists who were crowding around there, you know, and criticize and confront them for their role in creating this overall hellhole in Britain, or go down to the local Labour Party office because
Yes, indeed.
pushed and pushed and pushed for this, and they're now in charge. They could have gone anywhere, but going to a mosque is stupid, pointless. It allows the media to, you know, pigeonhole this.
Yeah.
But it's understandable why they did it, given the vast amount of effort that's not just Tommy, but a far bigger operation, GB News and all sorts have been doing to get the Brits fighting mad against Islam. Not so we'll say Britain, but so we'll go and attack Iran.
Well, you know, I sent you an email the other day about this interview, and for a joke, I said we better hurry up before Tommy's arrested again for another consultation with his handlers. And, what you said, I was just joking, like, you know, way out there. Now, there's another possibility, but we were talking, you were expressing about how, you know, this guy's a loner, etc. So many people are now. I mean, it's the Japan disease. It's everywhere, right? I could also, without engaging it as a topic, say that this incel phenomena has its female counterpart, and it's very strong, a sort of attitude of supremacy and entitlement among girls. It's a real slice and divide kind of phenomenon, and it's hideous. But I'm going to have to throw this out there. Having said that this guy's a loner, it's starting to ring bells about a certain Thomas Matthew Crooks, and I want to get to that because this guy is the new Lee Harvey Oswald. You know, who's to say this stabber wasn't some sort of he fits an agenda, doesn't he? As long as he's used just right. I don't like to buy into outlandish theories like that, but when you're looking, and this is the reason why I explain to people as an Australian nationalist, I comment so much on what's happening in America, because we're their vassals. We are their tributary states. What is given the green light there happens here. And there seems, you know, I mean, look at it. You know, you mentioned before that England doesn't have the same, is not as riotous as being presented, but I can bet you bloody France is. And taken together with all these different European nations everywhere in the West, it wouldn't bloody well surprise me. Now, this act that has been attributed to Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old former student and registered Republican, this is an absolutely enormous event. I want to get your take on it, Nick. I've just spent the last week and a half researching intensely and putting together an extremely detailed pieces, both on the rally from Trump's perspective and the actual shooter himself. And the thing, it stinks like, you know, summer's defrigerated cheese, you know.
Yes. Well, I think that the Southport thing is just whatever's twisted his head is out there in the liberal British culture, and there's many young time bombs like that of various different races. Lots of white lads, more white lads. But I spoke actually recently with several Muslims who are very, very concerned and saying that their community which they were very proud of a few years ago. And it was, everyone across the board, rather conservative and respectful to their elders, if not us, and so on, and looking after their women, if not ours. They're seriously worried that their community is now falling apart with drugs, divorces, men walking out on their kids, not to another wife, having another wife and more kids, walking out on the wife and the kids, women walking out on their husbands, lots more girls taking a increasingly feminist approach. They're very, very concerned about this. So their community is falling apart. And in particular, I was interested that both of them said that, well, one of them in particular, who deals a lot with women who've been abused, and domestic violence and so on, saying that something he's picking up from Muslim women is they're saying, so many of them are saying, the younger ones, saying, I haven't found a man I want to, it's my duty, blah, blah. But all the boys want to do, all the young men want to do, all my husband wants to do is to sit around playing video games, drinking and playing video
this before.
And stays in his own room and won't come out and won't look after the kids, won't do what he's supposed to do. So it's infecting them as well. So I think that the one up in Southport, that's what that is. As for the Trump thing, there's been so much hatred directed against Trump from vast swathes of the American elite, the media, the politicians. When senior politicians have been saying for several years, he's literally Hitler, he's a threat to democracy, he'll impose a dictatorship, then of course there's, what's your response to that? The logical response from someone who's young, idealistic, and probably unhinged is, well, someone ought to shoot him. No one shot him, shall I go and shoot him? So Crooks won't be the only one who it wouldn't have taken much of a nudge to push him into going to shoot Trump. And whereas the Southport thing, I don't believe anyone's nudged him. There'll be lots of conspiracy theories, but the psychological barrier to jump for the MI6, MI5 to do what they call a wet job and get someone killed because they're a nuisance. Okay, fair enough. That's their job. They're going to kill 3 kids. Very much less, much less likely. But for the American deep state to hunt around and find someone suitable to push over the edge to kill Trump, entirely possible. There was one commentary I saw, I don't know if you came across it, Nathan, in your research. One bit of a thread and comments on social media that I saw at one stage was that Crooks had an online girlfriend who was Ukrainian. Did you come across that?
I haven't. It's all conflicting. And I'll tell you something else, Nick. Right at the moment, the FBI, and don't forget Christopher Wray just the other bloody week was trying to tell us that it was just shrapnel that hit Trump's ear. They came out today or yesterday, and they are claiming that Crooks had a online presence, right? And the one thing he hasn't had is an online presence. But anyway, they're saying they've found an account they believe belonged to him. And by the way, this is the FBI. These people control the absolute infinity of surveillance technology. And they're claiming that this account that they believe belonged to Crooks posted anti-Semitic material, bloody. And so the same people that have been loading up Christians, Catholics in the United States, that have been loading up under every sort of false pretext Trump supporters, anybody that went to snap a photo on the day of January 6th, thrown in jail, etc. These same people, it's now they're investigating it.
Of course.
There's so many incongruities around it. Look, I'll just state it. They tried to kill him. It didn't bloody work. What's her face? Cheetle. How? Honestly, it's as if Dickens wrote that name. It's as if Dickens wrote a surname for a novel. You know how he liked to write surnames that characterised his characters. Well, there's Cheetle. Well,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh well, Jim, I might as well just call you in to comment.
Oh, no. Look, as the original conspiratologist, no, look, a lot of that stuff's unbelievable, and anyone looking at it would come to that conclusion. There could be many reasons why the deep state and the parastate in the United States would consider doing something like this, but it obviously would show that they're very much forces out of control. And I think we were talking at one stage, even on a more pedestrian level, like that operation you had in the UK, Operation Canova, to discuss the murdering of people in Northern Ireland by an agent inside the IRA. These sort of things are believable, but this takes it into a whole new ball game. Would the secret state, the parastate, consider murdering a presidential candidate? Maybe they would. Maybe they actually would, which indicates a whole new era of lawlessness in the USA. I know you have your deep reservations, as I do, as to what, say, Donald Trump represents. But as we said, doors open sometimes for the most unlikely of people. They do things, they say things, they trigger events, and all of a sudden you've got a whole new political situation that you didn't have last week. And that's where I personally put Donald Trump. But would those in the US with a vested interest? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. If you look for motives, some of them are much better than the Kennedy assassination. There's the Ukraine question. There's whether or not there's enough maverick play in the Trump movement to end the Ukraine war, and we've discussed all of the things that war represents to the Western elites at the moment. Maybe they don't want to end this war. Maybe they want this war to continue. There's other things that Trump on the Middle East may say certain things about how much he likes Israel, but it's equally possible that he might not wish to do some things that the deep state might want him to do. There's plenty of motives to kill a US president. And maybe that's something, I think it can't be elevated into a normal politics, but from my point of view, it's something that our sort of people should consider as essential background material to the times that we're now living in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, certainly. As I was mentioning, the Ukrainian girlfriend is an intriguing possibility. I think that the Ukraine issue and Trump's stand, and Vance as well for the matter, their stand on Ukraine is such, although of course they may, if elected, flip. You can't tell.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Trump will do whatever Trump suits Trump. He's highly unpredictable. But as it stands at present, if they get elected, the whole Ukraine thing is likely to come to an end. Basically, Putin wins. The American military-industrial complex will then try and pivot further to China, which of course is what Trump's about. He's not fully a peacemonger, but they'll try and make their money. It'll make things harder, and it throws everything the whole West has done, NATO, so really the core of the deep state, where intelligence intersects with military things. Everything they've done for years now, and it's not just since 2022, it's back to 2014 with the Maidan coup. It all falls apart if Trump's elected. So whether it's a Ukrainian girlfriend would indicate actually the Ukrainian secret services, and you can understand why the Western media would cover that up, because that would finish it overnight, wouldn't it? Or the American deep state not wanting that to happen. And although, of course, there's sections of the American elite who are now backing Trump, especially the Zionist sections, over Biden, because Biden has basically said to the Israelis, well, you really shouldn't be killing Palestinians, but carry on. Whereas Trump basically has said, you really should be killing Palestinians, carry on. So the section, the right-wing Zionist bloc in the States, which prefer Trump to Biden, so they're backing him. But he's a sort of civil war within the elite. And on that, there's another reason that they're desperate to get rid of Trump, that for all our reservations about him and for all the problems he's going to bring, if he becomes president, it paralyzes the NATO, the Five Eyes, the whole, the Anglo elite worldwide especially, and their allies will be paralyzed for 4 years because all the other politicians hate Trump. So it puts this enormous division at the very heart of the West's response to the rise of BRICS and all the rest of it. So you can see they want to get rid of Trump because of that. And then everyone has reservations about Trump because he's a loose cannon. So vast amounts of money, vast amounts of power. The whole remaining edifice of American hegemony on the world stands to fall if Trump's elected. So why on earth wouldn't they kill him? So I have no doubt that Crooks was involved. I have no doubt that he was at least the main shooter. And I think it's highly likely he had no idea he was effectively working with the deep state. He just thinks he's doing what should be done. But he's been involved. And the fact there's so much, well, I'm sure what you found, Nathan, looking, you know, the police are warned about the fact that there's a man walking around with a ladder and and he's up on the roof there, and the police are told about it by the crowd and do nothing. And don't move Trump or whatever. It's a farcical situation. The only possibility is this actually, because a sensible, rational males from a time when society worked, and if an organization wanted to do something, it usually got it done. Are we misreading it? Is this in fact just the crisis of competence or the crisis of incompetence of collapsing Western society? If you put people into positions of power in, for instance, the intelligence services, in the police force and so on, wherever, if you put them into power, not on the basis of the fact they're good for their job, but because they tick a box, because they're a woman, because they're ethnic, because they're disabled, because they're gay, because they're trans, what's that going to do to the competence of your organizations?
That's right.
Well,
we end up with the Keystone Cops.
I've heard that argument that it was purely incompetence. It wasn't. It was actually willful neglect. On the morning of the rally, there was a briefing held by the Emergency Services Union, incorporating the local SWAT, the Butler and the Beaver County Police. The Secret Service and the Federal Police did not attend. As to the ladder that you just mentioned, that mysteriously falls out of the narrative, and Ray, the man that suggested that Trump was never shot, is now saying that Crooks never used the ladder. Look, I'll go down a rabbit hole if I go into everything. I'll actually send you my articles, Nick. I think I might eliminate you. I'll tell you one thing. I haven't heard about this Ukrainian girlfriend. And I'll tell you something, I don't even believe it, because one thing that's notable about Crooks from his background is he didn't have girlfriends. And
it was online girlfriend.
Yeah, might have
online. Well, the other thing is, the other thing is the mysteries surrounding his online presence, because all the internet sleuths couldn't find the damn thing. The unusual testimony was coming from the owner of Gab, who said that he believes, which I assume he's convinced of it, that Crooks posted on Gab, you know, the ultra conservative website, pro Biden material. Today we've got the FBI trying to say he was posting in between when he was 17, between 2009 or whenever he was 17, that, and they were specific about this vagueness of dates, anti-Semitic and other hostile sort of things, to help cement that narrative about the fact that he was not by any standards a Republican. And if he had, and he did obviously register as a Republican, but that was clearly to troll the Republican Party, which is a strategy that those leftists use to try and sway the internal machinations of that. So I completely, and I'll tell you, in all the material I've researched, I haven't heard about the Ukrainian girlfriend, and I don't buy it for a minute. Anyway, the guy's got too many zits on his face. He doesn't even look like he masturbated. And we're also told that we're also told that he was searching porn before he set off on his
he's an ideal parallax boy.
Yes, yeah, but
he's been found.
I mean, don't forget, at the beginning they tried to tell us that he was a lousy marksman, like
Oswald. Oswald
and
was
it
a
turns
lousy
out,
marksman.
well, maybe he was years ago rejected from membership with the varsity rifle team, but he became a crack shot. The guy was a goddamn. Well, look at the bloody shot he took. You know, was by the chair. And that's the thing. I mean, you got to say, what are they going to try next on the Teflon Don? And he really is the Teflon.
It always intrigues me that all these assassinations and attempted assassinations are never clear. And when something's not clear, that means it is clear.
That's exactly right.
There's a, like, you can imagine if Oswald shot Kennedy, it's a straightforward routine, but it isn't. If James Earl Ray shot Martin Luther King, it should be straightforward, but it's not. We know what RFK is saying in the United States at the moment about Sirhan. But things like this, some young kid doing something, it should be a clear matter, but it isn't. It's all confused. Now, I know some people come in and they deliberately confuse them. They create all sorts of red herrings and false things and all the rest of it. But you'd imagine it. And all we've got with this is mystery. When you end up with mystery, that says to me there probably is no mystery. And that in reality, the easiest way to understand it is probably the way that it actually occurred.
Well, and, look, you have to ask yourself why they practically opened the bloody gate for him. And,
well, that's the point. Facilitation. And the idea is that he's shot and then he can't be interrogated and you never find out what the truth is. But if we come back to the point Nick's raised, that there was some stuff in the media today in Mali. Ukrainian intelligence cooperated with obviously an Islamic group centered on the Tuaregs to attack the Wagner soldiers in Mali. And they apparently, it was quite a coup. They killed a lot of Wagner troops and troops for the Malian government. Were killed in an ambush. Ukraine intelligence has actually been quite good, if I can use that term, during this war. They bombed the pipeline in the Baltic Sea. They've carried out operations behind Russian lines. They've murdered generals. They've got information off social media. They've been able to employ community intelligence, carry out assassinations. They've actually been very good. So the idea of running a fake online girlfriend talking to a sexually troubled incel to maybe encourage him is not exactly something out of a spy novel either. We seem to be, and this is the point I'd make both to Nathan and maybe ask you here, Nick, is maybe again we're moving into a period of not only intense instability, but we're moving into a period where state actors of one sort or another are actually starting to attempt to eliminate people who they perceive. Maybe it's a paranoid view, but if they do it to someone who's a candidate for the presidency of the United States, then it's open slather. It can happen to anybody at any time.
We had FICO as well, of course. We've had assassinations, attempted assassinations in Europe as well. I agree with you entirely. The Ukrainian intelligence is, as an operative force, is actually really quite effective. Although you have to ask, do they actually do anything without the green lights from their American trainers and aides? And it's not really Ukrainian intelligence. It's the CIA and MI6 and British military intelligence giving it all to them. They're simply the cat's paws, the ones who actually act. Nathan, you mentioned, what else will they do to try and get rid of Trump? And again, let's reiterate, we all have severe reservations about Zio Don, but nevertheless, he doesn't fit their whole agenda. I think he's given himself the best protection possible in appointing J.D. Vance as his vice president. Because up until that point, if, for instance, he'd picked one of the old, Republican old guard, one of the Beltway Republicans, then get rid of Trump, and you immediately get someone who's one of you. J.D. Vance, yes, again, he's made the most appalling pro-Zionist noises because he comes from an evangelical American Christian background. So I'm not defending him, but I'm going to say he can't help himself. He's completely, there's no mind when it comes to Israel and so on, except of course he's now become a Catholic, where you're moving into a tradition of severe criticism of organized Jewry and the Jews as an ethnic group. So there's an instability there. No one knows where he may carry on the modernist Catholic line, or he could quite quickly go down the traditional Catholic line and not be such a good friend of Israel and the Jews anymore. But regardless of that, J.D. Vance, I've read his book Hillbilly Elegy several years ago, actually. I was hugely impressed by it. He does indeed understand and come from that utterly betrayed white working class. Yes, he's married to an Indian woman. Yeah, of course, he's part of the modern system. But he understands those people. Reading the book, you have to say he has a sympathy for those neglected people. And he's in effect like Trump on acid, really, except that Trump was a one-off. J.D. Vance, so much younger and so on, he's actually got the capability of developing an American first. Yes, a capitalist American first. Yes, a pro-Israel American first, but still an American first position. And he's being clearly, Trump is favored by those in the deep state and the military industrial complex who want to move away from their confrontation with Russia in order to defend Israel and to move to China. And Vance is very China. But initially, when I first sort of saw some of Vance's old anti-Chinese comments, oh, well, here we go. But even that, looking at him, when he's saying China is a menace and so on, he's not saying we need to send the Sixth Fleet to Taiwan. He's actually primarily saying China's a menace because our industries are hollowed out, because we can't cope with a war with China because we don't have the infrastructure and productive capacity at home. And because China is a threat long-term potentially to us, we need to rebuild American industry and American strategic industries. And at that point, of course, it creates lots of jobs for the people for whom he has a genuine affinity. And his position in China, actually, I don't think is that different from our position on China, which is, yes, the thing is a potential danger. It's certainly a potential danger to Australia. Yeah, but the way to deal with that is not to go and fight now over Taiwan, which for God's sake is Chinese, as far as I'm concerned. It's to build our own defences and to have an economic nationalism and not allow them to buy out Australia and not allow them to ship millions of Chinese into Australia and so on. So Vance here, he's not perfect and all the rest of it, but he's something that if they get rid of Trump, they've got someone who's younger, more energetic, rather more ideological, less just of a maverick, greedy capitalist crook, which they all are, and he's something different. I don't think they'll be as keen on getting rid of Trump now as they were a couple of weeks ago. I think that the Trump crooks was there, and some crackpot might do it, but I don't think the American deep state will be so keen to get rid of him now.
Not now, no. Not twice.
Just on the subject of J.D. Vance, I hate to rain on your parade, but I'll draw your attention to a very well-researched article by a young lady called Whitney Webb, and it appears on Unlimited Hangout. And I watched this discussed the other night, but I'll just read you this. The man behind Trump's VP pick, it's worse than you think. While J.D. Vance has his own controversies, his close connection to billionaire Peter Thiel, who is poised to have unprecedented influence in a new Trump administration, should deeply unsettle every American who cares about freedom, privacy, and reigning in the surveillance state.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you entirely. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that. I agree entirely. But I'm saying that, yes, the surveillance state and all the rest of it. But Trump was the one who has boasted constantly about, being the father of the vaccine and all the rest of it. So there's no difference there. But both of them are much less likely to get us all killed over Ukraine.
Yeah,
But one thing, and whatever else, yes, he might create. America's already a police state, so he might make America even more of a police state. But actually, he's going to try and rebuild American industry, which is good.
This is
American boy. He's not good for us. American power is bad for us.
Yes,
doesn't matter who's in charge of America.
This is the thing. This is the thing that is so abominable to the elites about Trump. And don't forget, in the first couple of years of his presidency, this was Ronald Reagan's position too, America first. They don't like that because they want to be a global hegemony, right? And what he's suggesting would impact the military-industrial complex. It would affect the complex array of relationships that exist between members of the permanent government and foreign influences. It would cut a lot. It would cause a lot of gravy to be spilled off a very comfortable train.
Gravy train, right?
Yes, it's a thing. But I mean, I don't know how they expect to win over the American public by kicking out a geriatric like Biden very democratically. You got to love the way the demo rats, which is the name they should really have, and then foisting the biggest. It's like they looked around, they go, "We've got to use her. We're going to use her." This giggling idiot. I mean, she might just be the stupidest person on earth. I would have given that to the White House press secretary, that black lesbian,
black lady with the French name. Yeah, be that as it goes. A very offensive thing to say, but freedom of speech is freedom of speech.
Let's just kick out the jams. But do you realise, Nick, that the other day they were actually paying people to go and support Kamala Harris?
That's the pitch. That's the end.
Now, gentlemen, as time rolls on, it'd be amiss of us not to talk about Israel and Hezbollah and the Golan Heights and what's happening now. You guys probably know I've been too busy on other stuff, but this looks like a real flashpoint. And as we intersect this with talk about moving Donald Trump out of the way, because as much as the Zionists might love him, he's really not going to want to send Americans over there or divert too much military hardware that way, which is one of the reasons he was so unpopular with the hard-line Jews to begin with. This seems like a time under the weakness of, I can't even call Biden a lame duck president. He's like he's deceased.
He's right. You're on the track.
Dead. So this is the time to push Israel into a conflict, which, let's face it, the absolute, a hell of a lot of the background people. I think that the background in the United States, they say that Obama and to a certain extent Hillary Clinton are operating the Democrat machine behind it, but there's definitely military persons having their interests looked after. Military person, I can't tell you whether they're wearing G strings or not, or what brand of
guys
perverted military they are, but they would welcome Israel rushing at Hezbollah. Your thoughts, gentlemen, your thoughts. Enough of my voice.
Jim,
okay, look, I think that obviously Israel, by murdering one of the leaders of Hamas, shows an escalation. Had that been the very first thing they'd done 8 months ago, They could have snaked their way out of the all-embracing confrontation and said, oh, well, we killed the political leader of this group. We'll knock off a few more military leaders and then we'll do something to end the situation. They went about it the other way around. So the killing of the Hamas political leader is a dangerous escalation. The Lebanese thing is a quagmire. There's a gentleman who I won't name. Nick, you've indicated you've spoken to some Muslims and others. I had a conversation with a Lebanese Muslim, I'll say somebody, who used to me the phrase that Lebanon is an easy place to invade, but a very hard place to leave. And I think that reminds us of Saddam Hussein. I think that it's hinged on this now for months and months and months. And I'll hand it over to you by saying there's a famous quote from the lefties' ex-hero Che Guevara. They asked him once, isn't it terrible what's happening in Vietnam? And Guevara said, oh, no. He said, I want 1, 2, 3, many Vietnams. And an attack on Lebanon and Hezbollah might be the unwinding of the Israeli state itself. And you don't even need Iran to be involved. Hezbollah fought them to a standstill 18 years ago, could probably fight them to a standstill again at enormous military cost. So I'd almost be tempted to take a devil's advocate view and say that if they're going to escalate it, let them escalate it. It'd be the defeat of the Israeli state. Over to you, Nick.
I think that the assassination of the Hamas leader may actually be an instead of invading Lebanon in the eyes of the Netanyahu government and so on, because I don't think that they really want to. Because let's face it, they invaded Gaza, the tiny cramped place with virtually no resources in military terms, and they still haven't been able to defeat Hamas in Gaza, let alone Hezbollah in Lebanon. Gaza has no hinterland, it has no rear ground, no proper supply routes in and so on. Whereas Lebanon and Hezbollah is a totally different thing. It's a serious army which kicked their backsides back in 2006, and it's far better than that now. It's played a major role in the defeat of the Western-backed Zionist puppets, Islamist insurgency invasion of Syria. It's a serious battle-hardened force, and Israel will not beat it. The only way they'll beat it, they managed to drag the Americans in as well. I need to say America is effectively paralyzed now until the election, then Lord knows what afterwards. The Israelis have got a terrible problem, haven't they? That they know that Iran is becoming extraordinarily powerful, that although the Iranian leadership have repeatedly said, we don't want nuclear weapons, they're haram, it would be very sensible for them to have nuclear weapons, not from the point of view of using them, but because then Israel can't use their nuclear weapons on Iran. And the one thing that would guarantee nuclear peace in the Middle East is if Iran was armed with nuclear weapons. Personally, I think the Iranians should get them as quickly as they damn well can. If I had one, I'd give it to them. As simple as that. Not because I want them to use it on Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or whatever. Jerusalem's ours as far as I'm concerned. Not the Muslims, it's not the Jews. Primarily it's ours. They should both have a right to go to their holy places in
places, that's right.
I don't want it blown to pieces. But if the Iranians have a nuclear weapon, then the Israelis are checkmated or checked down there. There's nothing they can do. So the Israelis have got the problem. They don't want Iran to get one. They obviously think they can, which they can, in due course. So they need to stop them. They've got to stop them. They can't stop them because they can't militarily defeat Iran unless they drag America in, and America and the West can defeat Iran. Although, would Russia allow Iran to be defeated and turn into a liberal state thing on their doorstep? I very much doubt it.
I would doubt that too.
The Chinese allow Iran to be defeated and a huge hole thereby put in the one belt.
Yeah.
I very much doubt it. So it is a potential trigger for World War III. And although the Israelis in assassinating him have ratcheted it up, I don't necessarily think that that means that they want war. Because if they wanted war, they've already had enough excuse to invade Lebanon and to push Hezbollah back and all the rest of it. They haven't, because they're going to get beaten by Hezbollah, and the Iron Dome will not be able to cope with what the Hezbollah and co and Iran and the Yemenis are capable of throwing at it if it all kicks off. And then we're back down to money, actually, because I've heard that various countries, including Britain, are looking very seriously at buying the whole sort of Iron Dome thing. And although it's largely American technology, buying it off Israel. So if the present, it's a little bit like the Abrams tanks. You know, it was regarded as a super weapon. The Iron Dome cannot be broken. We now know it can, and if they go to war, they'll not just get their ass hit by Hezbollah. We'll also see that the Iron Dome is not what it was cracked up to be, and that if you fire enough missiles to go back to Britain just before the Second World War, the bomber always gets through.
Well, I was merely raising that matter of Lebanon, Nick, as devil's advocate, and I tend to agree with you. It's unlikely that they'd take the chance of invading Lebanon. Defence in depth and everything defeated them last time. It's not a simple exercise. However, we do live in irrational times, and miscalculations can be made. If that miscalculation was made, and we look at Netanyahu's attacks in Gaza and whatever, and the shocking casualty lists that he's racked up, you need a Daniela Weiss or some other mad person in the Israel system to push them into a war, in which case the unravelling of their state is indeed a possibility. And sometimes, well, let's just say that might not be a bad thing in terms of global politics if it did unravel. That's all I have to say.
Well, can I just remind you, they tried to blame the Trump shooting on Iran.
Not on Hezbollah. Oh, yes, on Iran. That's right.
But as I say, Nathan, they're trying to blame the Southport riots now on the Russians. Saying this is stated. The rumours going around on social media that it was a Muslim who'd just come over on a boat from Dover. That this is actually the Russians doing this.
Putla, I think the term is these days. He did it. Had to be him. You know, he's in everything. You know,
well,
point taken.
We've been talking for a while, but just before we wind up, I really want to get in some comments about Paris. Apparently, they're having some sporting event there.
I've heard this.
And it's made itself quite unpopular by attacking the only religion that it seems permissible to attack these days. They had a grotesque opening ceremony, so bad that the Olympic committee's dropped it. Not the committee. The Olympics has dropped it from its official website. Sodom, Gomorrah. I don't know how you say those in French, or if there's,
they sound remarkably similar.
A counterpart to Parsifal. It's very gay, but as I'll call you a Christian, Nick, because you claim to be one. How did you feel about that outrageous display?
I only watched a little bit of it because I simply couldn't stomach it anyway. I had a feeling to be something fairly grim when your overall director is a young radical homosexual Jew. You can expect that there's going to be a fair bit of woke posing going on in this. But even though I didn't expect it to be as appalling as it was, and to be worse than the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony, takes the biscuit, and it was utterly disgusting. And I mean, blasphemous for a religious person, it's blasphemous. For a normal person, it's just grotesque. It's grooming of their children. It's promoting of the whole grooming, LGBT grooming gang thing. Utterly disgusting. But if it was just that, you could say, well, perhaps the Olympic Committee didn't realise what they were getting into. So, and as you said, they've now removed it from their website. But no, because the Olympic Committee has made the decision that men can box as women against them, just by saying, I'm a woman, me. So and that's utterly grotesque. So they're guilty as sin in this. And actually, so are all the other athletes, because they could deal with it like that. All they'd have to say, all the athletes, women and men, was, we're not competing.
Yes.
We're simply not going to compete if you allow men to beat up women in a boxing ring.
Yes.
When I first heard of women boxing, I thought, oh dear, didn't like that idea. I used to box, so I thought, the idea of women, it's not really right. Actually, I've seen women boxing at university level, and they're very skilled, they're very good. And I've got a little bit of a different approach to it. Moving into an eternal future of a low trust society, the more young women know how to beat the hell out of people, the better. So I've changed my position on that a bit.
Yeah.
But young women boxing must box young women and not box men pretending to be women. So it's absolutely grotesque. It was interesting, coming back to a religious point of view, the rain, basically on that opening ceremony, it was literally biblical. So we could have done with thunderbolts as well, some real fire and brimstone, but certainly it's well deserved. It's absolutely disgusting. It's going to carry on until the end of it, and it just, again, coming back right to where we started with the anger of the British people, the Southport and so on. It's not just about Islam and immigration. It's about feeling utterly foreign in your own country, and it's about feeling that the people in charge of all the institutions hate you, want to let people molest your kids, want to take everything that you're familiar with, want to take away your right to have foreign holidays, your right to have a car that actually works. People understand all this stuff going on, and it's making people really fighting mad. And all I can say to finish, it's about bloody time too.
Well, you'll notice. Oh, sorry, Jim. I
was just merely saying that by rubbing people's face in the official ideology, that's the best thing they can do to defeat that ideology. I'm very pleased they ran these games this way. I'm absolutely wrapped in it, because there's now 100,000 people, 200,000 people, different nationalities, different backgrounds across the world who are seeing it for what it actually is. Marvellous performance. Thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you.
Well, it literally rained on their parade, didn't it? But
It did.
I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here, and I'm going to say, for a hell of a lot of time throughout the feminist regime, they kept following men to places that men didn't want to be followed, into their private clubs, onto the golf courses. And I find that you can almost sit back with a little bit of a grin on your face as these creatures that ideologically they helped to incubate.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. In fact, Australia's #1 feminist, Germaine Greer, who probably, Nick, you've heard of her.
Yep.
Germaine Greer experienced an amazing catharsis, and she's had to accept that people like herself are responsible for a lot of this, and she's more or less said so. And she's now saying, no, men have to be defined as this, women have to be defined as that, and so on and so forth. So there's been a quite revolutionary reassessment. The devil's advocate on the point is well taken, but a lot of women who very foolishly in Australia voted on a referendum a few years ago regarding gay rights, gay marriage, all of this sort of thing, have now reached the conclusion it was never about that anyway. It was to open up the trans agenda. And that's been well and truly opened, and it's now everywhere all over our country. So there's a lot of things, to be very careful what you wish for, and a lot of people wish for things, and now they've got the exact opposite. And it's a marvellous wake-up call in terms of how the system actually works. So I'll end on that point.
Yes. Well,
just to finish off then from me, I'd say two things. First of all, of course, it's often said the revolution devours its own children. And you can see the feminist revolution, devouring and chewing up its own children. So that's great to see. It is good fun, as Jim says. But we shouldn't be. It's very tempting to go into the Schadenfreude. They had it coming, and just leave it at that. It's tempting and absolutely understandable. I do it too, but politically, it wouldn't be sensible. Just like it's politically easy to say all Muslims are the bloody same, blah blah blah, but it's not true. It's unfair, and if we are going to have a clash of civilization with Islam, because the ultimately Zionist-backed Islamist crazies and the Zionist crazies and the Christian crazies all want it, if we're going to have that, then the Shia Muslims are our best allies. So we have to be principled about this thing. It'd be very easy. It's very easy to say to them, yeah, they're all the same, they're all scum, they've all got to be blah, 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 blah. It's not true. And politically, it's not wise. Because one day we're going to need people like Iran, not just sort of standing by, but on our side. And their people in the West will be, should be on our side. We can't push them away. Likewise, with the feminists, the Germaine Greers have now woke up. It'd be very, very easy to say, nah.
Yeah, of course.
Easy and juvenile. Because actually, you've got the position where many young women who've been pushed by this incessant feminist agenda thing to a position where they're critical and hostile, worried about all men and so on, they're now actually being strangely pushed to a much more traditionalist position and understanding this has gone too far. So we actually need to be looking to try and build bridges with those people. You need to build a bridge with Germaine Greer, even if you possibly could. Hideous old hag though she has been for many, many years, because politics is the art of the possible, and it's much more possible to turn things around if men and women who are basically sensible, who've seen the full horror, looked into the trans abyss and recoiled from it. If we can find more areas on which we agree than disagree, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
okay.
Again, I was only playing the devil's advocate because
thank you for doing so.
I truly believe that two wrongs do not make a right. The truth lies in between, and that there's nothing wrong with the concept of legitimate equality, but only based upon where that equality is irrational by its inherent thing. And before I say good night to everybody, I'll just say, do you realise that every topic we've touched on tonight has had an interconnecting thread, and it's all about those elites? Not one topic has not tied back to the other. Yeah.
Absolutely so.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, listen.
Thank you and good night to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. It is always scintillating talking to you. I don't know whether you'll back up the river in your fine boat catching crayfish.
No, this is not a green screen. These are real books. I am at home at the moment. I'm on the river with the boat and family and so on at the weekend, but not until then. For now, I've got work to do.
With your,
indeed, so have I.
Your phallic octopus there. All right.
It's an octopus. It's not. It's in your twisted head, Mr. Sykes. That is. Look, I'll show you.
Yeah. All right. That's
you
an
tell
octopus.
me that is not an octopus.
That
Have you
is an
noticed the fact this is an octopus? I hope so.
Yes, that is an octopus.
Thank you.
It's just in the in you know, so far back from the screen there. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Look forward to seeing you again. Good night for now.